The courtroom was drowning in an oppressive silence. Ethan Cole, seated at the defendant's table, could feel the weight of dozens of eyes drilling into him. He tried to keep his composure, but the cold sweat forming on his temples betrayed his inner turmoil. At his side, Bear, his loyal K-9 partner, sat perfectly still but on high alert. The dog's sharp eyes scanned the room, as if sensing the invisible threat looming over Ethan. Amanda Blake, the prosecutor, stepped forward, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Every step echoed like a drumbeat of doom. She exuded confidence, her gaze cold and unrelenting as she locked eyes with Ethan. They had once worked together on high-profile cases. Now, she stood as the orchestrator of his potential downfall. Amanda spoke with a calm yet cutting tone. "Your Honor, the defendant is a man who abused his power. Today, we will present irrefutable evidence that he betrayed the very people he swore to protect." The words struck like a hammer blow. Ethan's jaw tightened as he fought to keep his expression neutral. He knew this was a setup, fabricated evidence and false witnesses, but the deeper truth eluded him. He needed to figure out who had engineered this. Bear let out a low growl barely audible. Ethan glanced at the dog, whose tense posture signaled that something was wrong. Bear knew danger when he saw it. Around the courtroom, the audience sat frozen in anticipation. Ethan scanned the faces, former colleagues, a few supportive friends, but many wore expressions of doubt. He knew how this worked. If he lost today, it wouldn't just cost him his badge. Could ruin his entire life. The tense atmosphere shattered when the courtroom door swung open. A police officer walked in carrying a sealed box. Amanda's lips curved into a faint, almost triumphant smile. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. Bear immediately stood, muscles taut, eyes locked on the box as if it contained something dangerous. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Could it be? Had they found it? The evidence he had hidden on that fateful night? The judge banged his gavel and instructed the officer to present the evidence. Bear gave another low, warning growl as the box was placed on the table. Ethan inhaled sharply. Whatever was inside could determine his fate. And the clock was ticking. If you enjoyed this intense chapter, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. There's much more suspense and twists ahead. You won't want to miss what happens next. Stay tuned. The officer placed the sealed box on the evidence table, and an uneasy stillness blanketed the courtroom. All eyes were fixated on the box as if it held a terrible secret. Amanda Blake approached it slowly, her expression unreadable. Each click of her heels echoed ominously across the room, heightening the tension. Ethan's pulse quickened, his thoughts spiraling out of control. What could it be? He knew what he had hidden that night. A physical item, carefully concealed. Yet here stood Amanda, confident as ever, about to reveal something entirely unexpected. Bear's growl rumbled softly beside him, low and threatening. It wasn't loud enough to draw attention, but Ethan felt the intensity in the dog's posture. Bear rarely reacted without reason, and when he did, it was never wrong. Placing a steady hand on Bear's shoulder, Ethan tried to calm him, though the tension between them was undeniable. Bear was more than a partner. He was a protector, a reflection of Ethan's own instincts honed over years in the force. If Bear was on edge, it meant trouble was coming. Amanda reached the box and slowly peeled off the tape, sealing it shut. She glanced briefly at the judge, who nodded his approval. Turning back to the courtroom, Amanda addressed the audience, her voice steady and commanding. This box contains crucial evidence that directly implicates the defendant in a covert criminal operation. She paused for effect, letting the weight of her words hang in the air. This item will prove that Officer Cole was not only aware of illegal activities, but that he played a significant role in covering them up. A faint murmur spread across the room. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he locked eyes with Amanda. He could tell she was savoring the moment, like a predator toying with its prey. But what threw him off balance was the unpredictability of her move. He had no idea what evidence she could possibly have. He had been thorough. No one should have been able to trace anything back to him, unless someone else had been pulling the strings behind the scenes all along. Amanda finally pulled out the evidence, a small black flash drive. The object caught the light as she raised it for everyone to see. The murmuring in the room grew louder. Ethan blinked, momentarily stunned. This wasn't what he had hidden. He expected physical evidence, a package he had hidden far from any prying eyes. But now, a new wave of panic gripped him. Is this planted evidence? Is it another trap? Bear shifted beside him, eyes locked on the flash drive as if sensing the danger that radiated from it. Amanda strode confidently toward the judge. With your permission, Your Honor, I would like to present this evidence to the court. The judge gave a nod of approval. Amanda inserted the flash drive into a laptop connected to a large courtroom screen. The projector flickered to life. Ethan's jaw tightened as Bear's growling grew more insistent. Whatever was on that flash drive had the potential to either destroy him or unlock a truth no one was prepared for. Ethan's mind raced back to the night at the warehouse. He wasn't alone that night. Someone had been watching. Someone who had known exactly what he found and what he tried to hide. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the projector came to life. The large screen flickered, revealing a folder of encrypted files on the flash drive. Amanda navigated through it with ease, her confidence palpable. Every eye in the room remained glued to the unfolding scene. Ethan's muscles tensed, his mind racing. He had no idea what was on that drive, and that lack of control gnawed at him. Bear's posture remained rigid, his sharp gaze locked on the screen as if expecting danger to leap out of it. Ladies and gentlemen, Amanda began. These files contain surveillance footage and communication logs obtained from a recent investigation. They directly implicate the defendant in a series of meetings with known criminal associates. Her voice was cold and precise, each word designed to tighten the noose around Ethan's neck. She clicked on one of the files and a video began to play. The footage showed a dimly lit parking lot. A figure resembling Ethan stepped into the frame, shaking hands with a man whose face was obscured by shadows. The camera angle and grainy quality gave the scene an eerie, almost surreal feeling. Gasps rippled through the audience as Amanda paused the video on the handshake. Ethan's mind reeled. This was impossible. He had never been there. He didn't even recognize the location. Someone had staged this, but they'd done a disturbingly good job. The resemblance was uncanny, down to the way the figure moved. His hands curled into fists as he stared at the screen, trying to suppress the wave of panic rising inside him. He needed to stay calm. The judge leaned forward slightly, his expression stern. Officer Cole, do you have any explanation for what we've just seen? Ethan stood, his voice steady but laced with tension. That footage is fabricated, Your Honor. I've never been to that location. This is a setup. He looked directly at Amanda. And I think the prosecution knows it. His words sent a ripple of tension across the room. Amanda raised an eyebrow, unfazed by his accusation. She crossed her arms and smiled faintly. Of course you'd deny it. But the evidence doesn't lie, Officer Cole. We'll let the court decide. The tension was suffocating. Ethan sat back down, his thoughts spiraling. He had to find a way to prove the truth, but time was slipping away. And whoever had orchestrated this frame-up was always one step ahead. Bear let out another low growl, his ears twitching as if he sensed something unseen. Ethan glanced down at him, feeling that familiar bond, the one that had saved him countless times before. Something was off and Bear knew it. Ethan's instinct screamed that the real enemy was closer than anyone realized. The next move could mean the difference between exposing the truth and losing everything. Ethan sat rigidly in his chair, his mind racing. Bear's low growl continued, barely audible to anyone else, but it echoed loudly in Ethan's ears. He leaned down slightly, running a hand along the dog's back in a silent gesture of reassurance. Bear wasn't just reacting to the video. He was sensing something more. Over the years, Bear had become attuned to subtle shifts in danger. Ethan trusted those instincts more than anything else. Amanda resumed the playback of the video. The footage now showed the supposed Ethan figure handing over what looked like a briefcase. The shadowy man nodded and walked away into the darkness. The grainy timestamp at the corner of the screen indicated it had been recorded 2 weeks prior, around the time Ethan had uncovered the real evidence at the warehouse. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Someone had carefully coordinated this frame-up to cover their tracks. Ethan's heart pounded. Who was behind this? He knew he had enemies, criminals he had put away, and even a few corrupt officials, but this was too intricate. His eyes scanned the courtroom. Among the faces watching him with suspicion, he spotted Captain Reeves, his former superior. Reeves had been oddly distant ever since Ethan's arrest. Had Reeves known something all along and kept silent? Bear's body suddenly tensed, his eyes locking on a man seated in the back of the courtroom. The stranger wore a plain suit and a cold expression, his gaze unflinching. Ethan followed Bear's line of sight. He didn't recognize the man, but there was something unsettling about him. Bear's instincts were never wrong. The stranger didn't belong here, at least not as a passive observer. Officer Cole, Amanda's voice broke his concentration. She was smirking now, clearly relishing his discomfort. You seem distracted. Perhaps the gravity of your actions is finally catching up to you. Ethan didn't respond to the provocation. Instead, he leaned closer to Bear and whispered under his breath, "Who is he? Boy, what do you see?" Bear didn't shift his gaze from the man in the back, his eyes narrowing. Ethan could feel it in his gut. This wasn't over. Whoever that man was, he was connected to all of this. And Ethan knew he'd have to find out before it was too late. The judge cleared his throat and called for a short recess. As the courtroom began to empty, Ethan noticed the stranger quietly slipping out the door. Bear stood up, muscles taut, ready to follow. Ethan rose as well, determination surging through him. He had one chance to confront this man, one chance to uncover the truth that could turn the trial in his favor. Ethan moved swiftly through the crowded courthouse corridor, Bear trotting silently at his side. His eyes darted between faces, searching for the stranger. A sudden glimpse of the man's back, gray suit, tall with a stiff posture, caught his attention near the main exit. Ethan pushed past a group of bystanders, his heart pounding. He couldn't afford to lose him. That man had answers, he was sure of it. "Excuse me." Coming through, Ethan muttered, weaving through the growing crowd. The courthouse was bustling with lawyers, clerks, and journalists, many turning their heads as they noticed Ethan in pursuit. Bear remained locked in, his gaze sharp as he sniffed the air, tracking the man's trail. They had done this countless times in the field, but this was different. No sirens, no backup. It was just the two of them. The man ahead reached the exit doors and slipped outside without hesitation. Ethan picked up his pace, his boots hitting the floor harder now. He burst through the doors and into the crisp afternoon air. The courthouse steps were crowded, and for a moment he thought he had lost him. But then, Bear let out a single bark, his nose pointing toward the street corner. "There. Good boy," Ethan whispered urgently, jogging in the direction Bear indicated. The stranger had crossed the street and was turning down a narrow alley between two office buildings. Ethan followed without hesitation, his mind racing with possibilities. Is he trying to lose me or lead me somewhere? Every instinct screamed that this was part of a larger game. The alley was dim and lined with dumpsters. Ethan slowed his pace, listening carefully. He could hear faint footsteps echoing ahead, quick but controlled. Bear sniffed the air again, his ears perked. The dog suddenly stopped, growling softly. Ethan froze, his hand instinctively moving to his side. But he wasn't armed. Standard courthouse security had confiscated his weapon earlier. "Bear, easy," Ethan whispered. He crouched low and peered around the corner of a dumpster. The stranger stood at the far end of the alley, waiting, his face now fully visible. He had sharp, cold eyes and a hardened expression. They locked gazes for a tense moment before the man took a single step forward and spoke. "I wondered how long it would take you to find me," the man said calmly, his voice low but steady. "But you're too late, Officer Cole. You should have stayed in that courtroom." Ethan's fists clenched as the man's words echoed ominously in the narrow alley. Bear stood at his side, growling with increasing intensity. This wasn't just a random observer. Whoever this man was, he knew too much. And Ethan was about to find out just how dangerous that knowledge would be. What do you think will happen next? Ethan is about to face a revelation that could change everything. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments. We want to hear from you. Ethan took a slow, cautious step forward, narrowing his eyes at the man. Bear remained tense beside him, teeth bared and ears back. The stranger showed no fear, his hands resting casually in the pockets of his gray suit. His cold, calculating gaze never wavered. For a moment, the only sound in the alley was the distant hum of traffic. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, his voice low but firm. "And why are you watching me?" The man smirked, tilting his head slightly. "You really don't remember me, do you? Typical. You and your badge, always so busy catching the bad guys. You never stop to think about the ones caught in the crossfire." He took a step closer, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel. "I'm here because someone needs to remind you what happens when you get too close to the truth." Ethan's mind raced. The man's words carried a weight of personal resentment, as if they shared a history Ethan couldn't place. Crossfire? What's he talking about? He didn't have time to piece it together. He needed answers now. Bear barked sharply, snapping Ethan out of his thoughts. The man flinched slightly at the sound, his mask of calm slipping for a fraction of a second. "You think you can intimidate me?" Ethan said, taking another step forward. "You're just another pawn in whoever's pulling the strings. But let me tell you something, you're not gonna scare me off. Not now, not ever." The man's expression darkened. "Is that right? You have no idea what you're up against. You think you can walk into court and tell your version of the story? That's not how this works. You've already lost, Cole. The evidence is stacked, and no one's coming to save you." He pulled a phone from his pocket and pressed a button. A moment later, Ethan's own phone vibrated in his pocket. He hesitated, then pulled it out. A message appeared on the screen. "Leave it alone or pay the price." Ethan's blood ran cold. The man turned on his heel and began to walk away, disappearing deeper into the alley shadows. Bear lunged forward, but Ethan held him back, his heart pounding. This wasn't just a trial anymore, this was a warning. Someone powerful was watching every move he made. Ethan knew that if he didn't act fast, the next move might cost him everything. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, his grip tightening on Bear's harness. The text on his phone glared back at him. "Leave it alone or pay the price." The words echoed in his mind like a warning bell. He glanced back at the alley, but the man was already gone, swallowed by the shadows. Ethan cursed under his breath. Whoever this man was, he had just made it clear, this wasn't just about the trial. There were deeper forces at play, and they were watching his every move. Bear tugged forward, eager to track the stranger, but Ethan held him back. "No, Bear. He's gone." He exhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in his head. Someone had orchestrated the perfect setup, and now they were using scare tactics to keep him cornered. But that message had the opposite effect. It only ignited his determination. If they wanted him to back off, it meant he was closer to the truth than he realized. As Ethan walked back toward the courthouse, he mentally replayed the events leading up to this moment. The discovery at the warehouse, the mysterious evidence that vanished, and now the fabricated footage presented in court. It was all connected. But how? He needed to dig deeper and fast. Amanda Blake might be unknowingly or perhaps knowingly playing a role in this conspiracy. Ethan clenched his jaw. If there was one thing he knew, it was that everyone had an agenda. When he re-entered the courthouse, he immediately felt the stares. Reporters whispered to one another as they noticed his return. Ethan ignored them, his focus razor-sharp. Bear walked closely by his side, still on high alert. They made their way toward a quiet hallway, where Ethan pulled out his phone again. He scrolled through his contacts and paused at a familiar name, Detective Sam Harris. Sam was an old friend and one of the few people Ethan still trusted. He dialed the number. After a few rings, Sam answered. "Cole? Man, you're in deep right now. I've been hearing things. What's going on?" "I need your help," Ethan said without preamble. There's more to this case than anyone realizes. I was just threatened. Someone's trying to shut me down. I need you to look into a few things for me. Start with a man who was at the courthouse today. Gray suit, mid-40s, cold stare. He's involved, but I don't know who he is yet. Ethan paced nervously near a bench in the courthouse's side hallway, waiting for Sam's call back. Bear lay at his feet but remained alert, his ears twitching with every sound. The minutes crawled by, the tension tightening around Ethan like a vice. He glanced at his phone for what felt like the 100th time when it finally vibrated. Sam was calling. Ethan answered immediately. I found something. Sam's voice was serious, almost cautious. That man you described, his name is Vincent Crowe. Former intelligence operative. Went off the radar a few years back. Now he's rumored to be working as a fixer for people with deep pockets. Ethan felt his stomach drop. He had heard of men like Crowe before. Ghosts who operated outside the law, paid to make problems disappear. So he's not just some pawn, Ethan muttered. He's the one coordinating all of this. Seems like it, Sam confirmed. But there's more. Crowe has ties to someone, Captain Reeves. It looks like Reeves may have been involved in covering up some major corruption. Maybe Crowe's here to protect his interests. The name hit Ethan like a punch. Reeves, the man he had once trusted, the person who had mentored him early in his career. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but the picture they painted was far worse than he had imagined. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling beneath the surface. I knew something was off with Reeves. He's been keeping his distance ever since this trial started. He paused, his mind racing. Crowe must have planted that fake video. They're trying to discredit me before I can testify about what I found at the warehouse. Sam's voice turned serious. You're in a dangerous spot, Ethan. They're playing hardball. If you push too far, they'll make you disappear too. You need a plan. And fast. Ethan nodded to himself. He couldn't back down now. He needed leverage, and there was only one way to get it. By exposing Crowe and Reeves before they could bury him completely. Ethan strode down the hallway, his footsteps echoing off the marble floor. Captain Reeves didn't move, his expression tense but composed. He stood near the window, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the polished floor. Bear's growl rumbled softly as Ethan approached, his instincts flaring. Ethan placed a calming hand on Bear's back, keeping his focus locked on Reeves. We need to talk, Ethan said, his voice firm and unwavering. Reeves sighed heavily and gestured toward a nearby empty conference room. Ethan followed, Bear close behind, ready for anything. The door closed with a faint click, sealing them in silence. For a moment, neither man spoke, both assessing the other like opponents about to enter a fight. Finally, Reeves broke the tension. Ethan, you don't understand the situation you're in. This trial is bigger than you. You've made enemies with people who won't stop until you're crushed. His tone was low, almost warning, but there was an undercurrent of guilt beneath it. Ethan narrowed his eyes. I figured that out when Crowe showed up, Ethan snapped. How long have you been working with him? How long have you known I was being set up? Reeves flinched slightly, his eyes hardening. It's not that simple. Do you think I wanted this? You stumbled into something you shouldn't have. You were supposed to walk away from that warehouse investigation. But you didn't. He took a step closer. I tried to protect you, but you gave them no choice. Crowe is here to make sure loose ends are tied. Permanently. Ethan's jaw clenched, anger boiling over. So that's it? You sold me out to protect yourself. You'd rather let me take the fall than stand up to them. His voice was tight with fury, but beneath it, he felt the sting of betrayal. Reeves had been like family once, a mentor he respected. Now he was just another pawn in a corrupt system. You don't get it, Reeves barked, his voice rising for the first time. If you push this any further, they'll come after everyone you care about. This isn't just about you anymore. The room fell into a tense silence. Ethan stared at Reeves, his mind racing. He knew the risk, but the thought of walking away sickened him. There was no turning back now. Ethan took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. "I'm not backing down, Reeves. Not this time. They want me gone. They'll have to try harder than this." Reeves shook his head in frustration, but there was a glimmer of something in his eyes, fear. Ethan knew then that he had struck a nerve. The clock was ticking, and the final showdown was drawing near. The courtroom was packed when Ethan returned, every seat filled with reporters, officers, and onlookers eager to see how the trial would unfold. The tension was palpable. Amanda Blake stood confidently by the prosecution table, clearly expecting the trial to go her way. Ethan, however, felt a surge of determination. He had the truth on his side now, and he was ready to expose everything. Bear walked beside him, his presence steady and reassuring. The judge entered, and everyone rose. Once seated, Amanda approached the bench. "Your Honor, we will now present additional evidence to solidify the case against the defendant." She signaled for the officer to replay the surveillance footage. The grainy video appeared on the screen again. Ethan's supposed meeting with the shadowy figure. The courtroom watched intently, the image of Ethan's alleged crime flashing before them once more. Ethan stood. "Your Honor, I object. This footage is a fabrication." Gasps echoed through the room. He stepped forward and continued, his voice firm and commanding. "This trial has been compromised by individuals working to frame me. I have evidence of a conspiracy involving Captain Reeves and Vincent Crowe, a man hired to suppress the truth." He motioned to Sam Harris, who had just entered the courtroom carrying a laptop. Sam approached the judge's bench and connected the laptop to the projector. "With the court's permission, I'll present security logs and communication records that expose how the fake footage was created." The judge nodded, and within seconds, the courtroom's atmosphere shifted. A new video played, showing the process of how Ethan's image had been digitally inserted into the surveillance footage. The room erupted into whispers. Amanda's confident demeanor began to crumble. This is irrelevant speculation," she stammered. Ethan didn't let her regain control. "It's not speculation. It's proof. And if you want more, I've got witnesses prepared to testify about the illegal operations that Reeves and Crowe were covering up." He turned to the judge. "They tried to silence me, Your Honor. But now the truth is out." The judge called for order, his gavel striking the bench. "Ms. Blake, it seems the prosecution has a serious issue with the credibility of its evidence. Until further review, this case is suspended." The crowd exploded in shock. Amanda stood frozen, her case unraveling before her eyes. Ethan exhaled deeply, feeling the weight of weeks of fear and uncertainty finally lifting. As the courtroom emptied, Ethan felt Bear nudge his leg. He knelt beside the dog and whispered, "We did it, boy. We made it." Bear wagged his tail, his watchful eyes finally at ease. Ethan knew the battle wasn't entirely over. There were still enemies out there, but for now he had won. The truth had been brought to light, and he would no longer face this fight alone. Did you enjoy this thrilling story? Don't forget to give us a like to support more exciting stories like this one. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel now and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next episodes. Let us know in the comments. What would you have done in Ethan's place? Share this video with your friends who love stories full of drama and suspense. Thank you for watching.